You're listening to Halftime with your host, Mylan Bittenbender, where each week we take a few minutes to step off the field of life and discuss the challenges and joys of navigating life in the middle years. I hope your time with us today will help you develop your strategy for a winning second half. Welcome to the locker room. You're among friends. Today's episode is a conversation with South Haven native Troy Stansberry. Troy is a musician at heart, and he lives his life knee-deep in music and certain kinds of carpet. Troy now lives in Grand Rapids, and he continues to teach music. He loves to share his musical gift with other people. It's really his calling. It's his life calling. And so he looks at midlife and life in general through kind of an artistic standpoint, an artistic viewpoint or worldview, if you will. And today he riffs on some of the wisdom that he's learned in his midlife years and before. And we get to receive that through this conversation, my conversation today with Troy Stansberry. Hey there, Troy. Thanks so much for joining us on Halftime today, for being willing to give us some of your time as our guest. And we're so excited to hear about your story today. So thanks for joining us.
Hey, no problem. Glad to be here, man.
Yeah. So Troy and I, we've gone back. We met. I don't even know how long ago. It's probably been 15, 20 years. Do you remember the first time we met?
I think I was teaching at Jared's, and I think you were there with Jen.
Okay. Yep. My brother-in-law,
Yep.
who is also a musician. If you don't know anything about Troy, kind of one of the things you have to know about Troy is that he's a great musician. We're going to talk a lot about that today. We're going to talk about his transition through midlife, which there's some really interesting things unique to his life that we're going to cover today. But first of all, I want to take a few minutes and just kind of because you are, how old are you?
54.
54. I'm 54. When's your birthday?
August 30th. I'll be
Okay.
55.
So you are just a little bit older than me. You're about 6 months older than me. And so obviously we were all kind of hitting our teenage years. I don't know about you, but that was, for most people, that's kind of their sweet spot. That's kind of what we remember as our coming to age, or, coming to being and all of that. So let's talk a little bit about your life experience in the 80s. What were some of the brands that you remember, or the bands that you remember? What were some of the highlights of your teenage years?
Well, if you look at everything from a musical perspective, which is what I do, you think about the most influential musical times of your life is from when you're about 10 to when you're 21.
Yeah.
All right, that covers your whole junior high experience, your high school experience, your college experience. And those musical years really influence the rest of your life. So it's like for me, when I was 10, I was, probably fifth or sixth grade, and I started listening to the radio a lot. And so then in junior high was 82 and 83, so the MTV hits, and that's very powerful. And then in 83, when I was an eighth grader, I got my first electric bass,
Mm.
and I had the records 404, Styx Paradise Theater, Def Leppard Pyromania, and Michael Jackson Thriller.
Oh
So
yeah.
those were huge for me. But my first song I ever learned how to play on bass was Beat It by Michael Jackson. So I have a deep affinity for anything Michael Jackson, Jackson 5 for my whole life. So, I mean, those things were great. But then through high school, I started playing music. And I also like a lot of rock and roll stuff too. As a kid, I loved Kiss. I had a Kiss lunchbox and, you know, watched Phantom of the Park several times. So,
Now, where did you grow up?
in Michigan.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, you and I have talked about it. I know some of, or most of your growing up years, your childhood years, were right here at the end of my street. So we would have been neighbors. We just missed each other by a couple
Yeah,
decades.
861 Phillips, that gray apartment plex next to you. I was born
Yeah.
there, raised there until I was a senior in high school. Lived in South Haven most of my life until I was about 30. Then I moved to Grand Rapids
Okay.
in '02. Yeah, in '02 I moved to Grand Rapids, and I've been here ever since.
Yeah. Yeah.
Still
Yeah.
go back to South Haven, though. I have family there. My grandmother is still around there. My little brother, Michael Harris, lives in Covert. So I've come back to South Haven quite a bit.
So you dove right into the whole music thing. Music was obviously a huge influence. Do you feel like the music itself, or the artists, or the kind of the culture around the music, what do you think really seemed to connect you seem to connect with deepest?
Man, I don't know. Just I grew up in a pretty poor situation, and that's
Hmm.
not anything to feel sad about. There are a lot of things that you come out of that are great. Like we didn't have a TV when I was little, so I read a lot, comic books especially, but I read a lot of books too. Loved reading and loved listening to music.
Yeah.
And I am biracial, so it's like there was a lot of different stuff available to me, especially from different friend groups. There was, I love metal just as much as I love funk, and
Mm.
there's just a lot of stuff that I listen to that's real different, but it was cool. It's like, I like, especially like today, I like country music because music tells a story. It takes you somewhere you can't really go, and it lets you use your imagination. When everything's spelled out for you on the big screen, there's no room for imagination, and it's cool. I love some Avengers, but it's kind of cooler when you can kind of make it your own, when you can like read it or hear it and you picture the story, and you can put yourself into that, hero spot, and you become the protagonist in the story that you're hearing. And there's just something about that I think is cool.
Yeah. 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 So you got drawn into the music. Obviously, it hit you at a deep level. And one of the things I find interesting is that each of us have kind of a different soul language. Music. I enjoyed listening to it, but it didn't hit me like that. I'm married to a musician. My wife Jen. She has a degree in music and all that kind of stuff, and she has a completely different relationship with music than I do. But obviously, music is still something that seems to touch every single one of us at some level, and it's a huge part of our soul language. But so you not only enjoyed the music, you not only like were drawn into the music, but you became a musician. And I really want to kind of unpack a little bit of that. Did you say you got your first electric bass at 12?
12 or 13, it was eighth
Okay.
grade, like right before the summer of eighth grade. So a lot of what I was trying to play was a lot of those records I was telling you about. When I say records, I mean like a vinyl LP. That's what we had back in those days.
Yeah.
So, I'd have that stuff and listen to it and repeat it over and over. And I'd try to play it, and just listen to all the different cool stuff that you liked, that you hear on the radio or whatever. You go buy that record and back in those days, you got to see the whole gamut of what an artist did. You'd have side A, side B, track 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, flip it over, and you'd listen to a whole record that would take you through a whole gamut of what that artist was doing and trying to show you everything about them.
Yeah.
You don't really get that today. You get a quick pop tune, you can download that one song, and that's okay. There's good songs, but back in those days, it was really about the artist
Right.
too. So to see all the different things that that person could do and all the different songs they had, and you know, that was just a different time.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we gain some things, but we always lose some things as well. And you kind of put your finger on some of the stuff we lose when all of a sudden we're streaming everything, and some algorithm is choosing our music for us and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of crazy the way that affects all of that. So you got sucked in. Obviously, music for you is not just entertainment, but it touched you deeply. You decided to get your own instrument. And did you like, when did you start dreaming, or did you? I mean, what was your kind of dream at that point? Just to learn a guitar, play something, or did you have some kind of aspirations? Or when did that set in?
In eighth grade, after I'd gotten my bass, if some of you are a certain age, you might remember this. There was this band that would come around in junior highs called Freedom Jam. And Freedom Jam would play cover rock tunes and they would tell kids to don't drink and don't do drugs. And I was in music class when they came to our junior high and they got a whole bunch of us music students to come out and help them set up. And I just so happened to be placed with the bass player, Greg. And
Hmm.
I was helping him get set up. And he had all this nice gear and he played bass. And I was like, oh, he's like, do you play bass? I was like, I just started. And he showed me how to play Beat It. And he let me play it with the band when they went to play this on the stage for the sound check. And the lights came on and there was like this full rock band with this PA
Wow.
system. And I was playing the song, and it was a simple lick. And I was like, but when I played it, I was just hooked. I was like, oh, this
Yeah.
is cool. I want to do this. If this is a job, I want to do this. And that's kind of where it started.
Wow. That's cool. That hook story is always interesting. I think just to here. So you started playing, learning more. Did you ever connect with that particular band or that individual again, or was that just kind of like a moment in time and you were headed in a new direction from there forward?
No, I don't know if he's out there anywhere, man, but I appreciate that guy. But no, I just kind of, I went home and it was like, I started paying more attention to like, what does it take to do that?
Yeah,
And then, I had a lot of people tell me what's like, well, you're just, you know, poor kid from South Haven, Michigan. You'll probably never be able to do that.
yeah,
And it's like, well, I didn't know why I couldn't do it. I was just like, well, why can't I do it? Nobody could really tell me like, well, you just can't do it, or you have to work too hard to do that. You would have to be the best at what you do in order to even have an opportunity. And I was like, I could do that. How many hours a
yeah.
day does it take? And I mean, the only girlfriend I had in high school is right here. I spent hours a day learning MTV songs and practicing stuff. And I played in the orchestra and I practiced scales and all the stuff they told you had to do to be good. And I liked it so much. It didn't feel like I was working hard. I wanted the results so bad. I
Mm.
just kept doing it and kept doing it and kept doing it. And, I was in a band when I was 16 and I played out, and if anybody who's my age remembers, my band in high school played our senior proms after party at the, cafeteria at the high school and stuff like that. So
What was your band's name?
that band was probably called Confusing Words. So
Nice.
we did Kiss covers and the Who covers and Sure and a few originals maybe.
Yeah,
It's a long time ago, man.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So during your high school years, it was probably more of a hobby, at least what everybody else saw. But in your own mind, you had aspirations for more. And I love the fact that you were asking the question, "Why not me? Why not me?" So, so uh, tell me kind of where that all went then. I mean, I know a little bit of your story, but I want to hear you tell it for our audience because obviously a lot of people out there don't know. You actually out of school didn't uh, waver far from that, but you really continued to lean in, right?
Well, when I met a few other, people that were really great musicians, and I'd go to guitar stores and hang out, and I'd watch guys that were way better than me and get tips and stuff. But then, somebody's like, if you really want to be a musician, you need to go to school for music, learn to be a professional in school. And then I was like, well, what does that take? And then I, read a bunch of stuff that said you have to do this, you have to do that. So I thought, well, if you're going to be the best, I wanted to go to the best schools. So I thought I'd try out for Juilliard, Eastman, and Berkeley. And I made it into Juilliard and Berkeley, but I wasn't going to. My dog.
Yeah.
I knew I wasn't really going to be able to go because the cost was just outlandish. But I really just wanted to get the piece of paper that said you were good. I thought those were the schools. I thought that if I had it to do over again, I probably wouldn't do it like that. I was just shooting for this, the moon, thinking that if I made it to those, that would be, my piece de resistance. But so realistically, not being able to get into those, not having the finances, I ended up going to Lake Michigan Junior College at the time, and I played in the show choir and the orchestra and the jazz band there. Then I ended up actually going to Western to study music, and I did win a scholarship there, but times were tough for me at that time, and I ended up not doing well with other distractions at college. And I was away from home for the first time, and I ended up leaving school after a year. But I still played in a band, and I was playing out a lot. And then I ended up falling into a band called Knee Deep Shag,
Mm.
and they were up and coming band on the scene. And I ended up being in that band for almost 10 years, and we did really well. We were all really dedicated musicians, and I was really able to find a place with that. It was my full time job. We were doing really well, and we almost signed a record deal. We had talked to a few different companies, some big, some little, things like that. But the whole time I was doing that, I had grown up in church, and while I was doing that, I had kind of given up on the church thing. I'd had some hurts from church, which is not an excuse unless we let it be to not be in church, but I did. And from 1987, when I left high school till 1999, I just was doing my own thing, trying to become, a musician that had fame and fortune, and I'd be able to change things for my family and in my life, because I thought that was the only way to do it. It's the only way I knew how.
Mm,
So,
yeah. So yeah, talk a little bit more about you say you grew up in church. What did that mean to you, and um, what was that church experience or your religious or faith experience? What was that like in your younger years?
well, my mom and grandma, who were my parents growing up, I grew up in a home without a dad. So, we just went to church every Sunday. And for a kid, it's like a sentence worse than death, sitting there listening to adults say a bunch of gobbledygook to you while you'd rather be outside playing. That was church for the most part when you're a kid. Then
Yeah.
as you get a little older, you start to enter into a personal relationship. You start asking questions like, what is this God thing? Who is this Jesus? Why is the Bible important? So I like to read. So I read some Bible, and I'd always try to ask questions that I wanted to know. But, the Bible school teacher sometimes didn't have answers, and it's okay not to have answers. I think I respect the people who were on that journey with me for sitting with me and telling me that they didn't have an answer. I
Mm.
respect that more from leadership than I do somebody who always has to have an answer, because sometimes we don't need answers for people. We just need to say like, hey, I'm here with you. And when I say I don't know, maybe we can find it out together or something. I think that's more beautiful than having answers all the time, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and that's where I ended up being, I was very involved in church in high school and everything, but then there was a great church hurt around some people that I knew. And,
Mm.
you my whole time away from the church, I never would have said God doesn't exist or I don't believe the Bible. It's just like I choose to live a life outside of those parameters.
Yeah.
I'm gonna live how I want to live, and that's just what I'm gonna do. So
Yeah.
wasn't until oh, go ahead.
Well, you said you were very involved in church in high school. Do you feel like you ever really had a real deep faith connection in high school, or were you just kind of involved in the church organization? What was
No,
it for
I
you?
I had a real deep faith connection. I had a good youth group experience, went to church camps and stuff, and I saw some really great things happen. Um,
Yeah.
I don't want to make it sound like, it's a horrible thing, but we were pretty poor growing up, underprivileged, whatever. And there were some times, my mom, she wasn't able to work. She had some issues with her legs. She couldn't walk really good. And there
Mm.
were some Christmases where, I was a kid and learned that, there's no such thing as Santa Claus because you've been real good. You're not going to get gifts because we're broke. But at that same time, I saw people from church come around my mom and provide for her where she needed something, that showed me that God loves people through other people,
Yeah.
and I'm a big fan of that. So I was like, I see, I believe, and I mean, I think if I hadn't established a faith base on who God is and what he does, I wouldn't be able to walk away for 12 years and always have that little tug in the back of my heart reminding me, where I came from and what I should be doing,
Yeah.
you know? So
Yeah, so this podcast is about midlife. It's about and uh, we have these different stages to life. We've talked a little bit about your kid years. We talked a little bit about your teenage years. We've just started to kind of unpack a little bit about your young adult years. The midlife is it kind of comes after that. But I think it's really important to kind of understand some of the trajectory because I think midlife being a transition point, it's important to understand what trajectory have we been on before midlife and what kind of transitions come at the midlife stage. So talk a little bit about your young adult years. So you're out of high school. Did you go into a music career, or was there other stuff you were doing, or family, starting a family? What was that stage of life a little bit, a little bit of that like?
yeah, well, I got married and had a kid when I was 22. And at the same time, I was starting a music career. And so when I say music career, like, playing in a band wasn't enough to sustain everything you need. So I've always taught on the side, or I've worked for guitar stores.
Oh,
Back
okay.
in the 90s, I worked at a big guitar store in Kalamazoo. I taught, I worked on the floor. Then I had a band that played out at night. And plus I do like a Genius hired gun hits, like I get called from all kinds of different people. We need a bass player who can read or who can play country or funk or soul or blues or gospel. And that's usually me. I can do a lot of different stuff. It's kind of the jack of all trades, master of none, but enough to get you through in a pinch and make a paycheck. I mean,
Yeah.
it's no different. I mean, everybody has to find a job. I just chose to make my job playing music as much as I could. So back in those days, in the 90s, I did that a lot, and it was good to me. There was a time in the late 90s where I was, if you listen to any radio out of Grand Rapids, I did probably 10 commercials for GRD and played bass on them. So I mean,
Mhm.
everybody in the car listening to that probably heard my playing at some point in time while my band was trying to, get out. I mean, we never signed a record deal, but we had a really good run. We were a pretty good band. We, sold a lot of tickets at venues. We had a lot of good gigs. We were a pretty high profile local band, and we were out on the road pretty much every weekend in the Midwest, from Chicago to Erie, Pennsylvania to Buffalo, New York to Dallas. We were making trips to those places all the time. And it
Yeah.
was enough to make a living.
Yeah. So, can you give us a little bit of your, I mean, everybody loves a bass solo, right? Can you just give us a little bit? You got your girl right there. You said that was your girlfriend, so uh,
This is
yeah,
so
give us
you're
a little, give us a little something. Nice. You still enjoy it, don't you?
oh yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
that's cool.
It has
That's
a
cool.
place though. There are priorities, and we have to make sure that our priorities are in the correct place.
Yeah,
No game, no. It's just as you mature, you got to have things in the right place. You got to take care of your family. You got to be responsible. You got to be there for your kids. Somewhere after that, I mean, the job has a high place, but it should never overtake your faith, your family, your children, then your job, and then your friends. I kind of feel like that should be a natural order of things to you if you've got your head on in the right place.
yeah. Did you always? Do you feel like that was your position when you were, say, 25 years old? How do you feel you did at balancing all of that and getting it right?
No, not at all. I sucked at that. Too many guys want to go to the place where they're loved and respected the most,
Hmm.
or where they have the most fun or have the least amount of pressure on them. And unfortunately, that's not always the place where you need to be.
Yeah.
A lot of my students say, well, that's tough. That puts a lot of pressure on me. I'm like, well, the only difference between a worthless lump of coal and a precious diamond is pressure. It makes
Mhm.
you better. It gives you more value. It helps you be more than you ever thought you could be. Without pressure, you never really go anywhere or become anything you need to. So I don't mind a little bit of pressure. So I put it on myself to try to do things right, think right, be right, treat people right. And then whatever I do, I try to do it well. I put my pressure, I put more pressure on myself than I usually get externally to, do whatever it is I need to do.
Yeah. That's awesome. And obviously if you didn't have that mindset when you were 25, something's happened between then and now. And that's, again, that's a lot of what this whole podcast is about. What happens in life to shape us and mold us and help us to, I don't know, mature or whatever. So share a little bit more of your story. Where did your music career end up taking you? And we talk at midlife about this. Usually, there's a stop sign. There's something that happens that kind of we hit a wall. We come to a place where we realize I can't continue to live like this. Uh, there's a there's a point in the road where we have a decision to make. I'm going to go right or left. Share with us a little bit more of your story. What led to that point, and what did that look like for you?
Oh yeah, that's easy. In 1999, my musician life was going really well. The band was going really well. A lot of people thought, we were going to be the next, thing. I had opportunities. We were opening for famous people. I had a couple of offers from some people that if I told you their names, you would recognize them. But that's not the important part. The important part was as I was getting more successful at my workplace, my family life was really struggling and
Mm.
suffering because of, men's tendency to be selfish, and not want to deal with the tough things. So I had a daughter at the time in a marriage that wasn't doing great. So um I also started really feeling God tugging on my heart to really pay attention to what he wanted to do with my life. And I had to come to the place where it may not be music like I thought.
Mm.
So when I ended up, I guess what you could say I'm a prodigal. We had talked about this, but I had seen God's goodness. Something happened. I used it as an excuse to do my own thing, which didn't work.
Mm.
And then I felt God calling me back into a relationship with him to do and be what he had wanted me to do and be. I didn't even know what that was, but I know that to be right for my daughter, who was a priority in my life, I needed to do something different. So I walked away from music thinking that that would be the best thing to do, is not do music at all. And it kind of crushed me. You talk about a midlife crisis. I was 30. That was my midlife crisis. But thank the good Lord, I found out that I am not just Troy, the bass player.
Mm.
My value doesn't come from being able to play bass for anybody, or even if I was the best bass player in the world, that shouldn't be where your value is. You're not what you do.
Yeah.
Nobody will remember what you do when you die. They'll never go, hey, that so-and-so was a good gardener, blah, blah, blah. People will always remember how you make them feel. If you love them, if you were kind, if you were considerate, if you were encouraging, people remember that forever.
Yeah.
They don't care what you did. And most people don't remember what your job was, you know? So I had to start to change my thoughts to what is it God wants me to do, or who does he want me to be there for? But the gifts and the callings are without repentance.
Mm.
My gift, my calling's always been music, is what makes my heart beat, and I've just transitioned. A lot of what I do is still based around music. I was a worship pastor for 14 years. I led worship for youth groups. I led a church. I was also a men's ministry pastor. Um, and to this day, I have a wedding DJ company. And I also do some live music. As you know, I did your
Yep.
sister's wedding at your church.
Yep. Yep.
So
Yeah.
so it's still in it, and I'm still able to do music and make a living. You don't have to be a millionaire or sign a record deal or be on TV.
Yeah.
You can go punch the clock and do a job at honest day's work for an honest day's pay. And there are plenty of opportunities if you're willing to find that if you want.
Yeah. Yeah. So, if I remember right, didn't you have like an offer to be a part of a band, and you had a big decision to make? Um, or what led to that like crisis moment? You said when you were about 30, where you had what did that crossroads look like?
Well, it's a lot to say here. I'll try to condense it, but
Okay.
you know, uh, there are certain things you just can't take with you.
Mhm.
The Bible says that fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, and it's not a fear like I'm horribly terrified of this. It's more like when you did something wrong and you knew your parents were going to be angry and disappointed with you. You were afraid of doing that. So I think when you have that kind of fear before the Lord, it's like, the last thing I want to do is be a failure as a husband and a father and be a successful business person,
Mm.
you know? So, and I think that that's a God thing. I think that God is called our Heavenly Father for a reason.
Yeah.
The attributes of fatherhood should be absolute when it comes to him, and they should trickle down to who we are as fathers in our earthly form. So, I mean, I don't know how to encapsulate it any better than that.
Yeah. 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 Now you said that whole thing happened around 30. As you know, I've been doing this whole midlife stuff and kind of investigating and looking, we wouldn't necessarily normally think of 30 as midlife, but it felt like that for you. Help explain why that might have been a midlife turning point for you.
I tell you, man, there's I don't like it when people just play the racism card for a lot of stuff or use it as an excuse. But if you look at the average lifespan of a black male in America today, it's about 61.
Mm,
So middle of life would be 30. You know, if you look at the average white male, it's almost 13 years difference. It's like 72 or 73. You know, and when you get to a midlife crisis, a lot of times people just got to the place where they have no hope. Nothing they've done has been worth anything. And they just all of a sudden either don't give a rip about anything and they go off the deep end,
mm,
or they really just have to have a hard look about what they're going to do to change their life for the better. A lot of people who are raised in a poverty level existence, a lack of education, a lack of hope, a lack of father showing you how to do and be certain things as a young man, you may hit that hopelessness at 18
wow.
and go out without a care in the world because nothing you've done is worth anything. Nobody's affirmed you ever, and you're already hopeless. So why does it matter what I do?
Mm,
Why does it matter who I am? I'm going to party, drink, smoke, and do whatever I want to do that makes me feel good because my life has already sucked for 18 years, you know? So, I mean, to me, you know, COVID is the second worst pandemic of my lifetime. Fatherlessness, number one.
mm. You know, we met yesterday and we talked a little bit about that stuff, and you kind of unpacked some of those ideas. And when you said that you hit your midlife crisis at 30, and I said, that doesn't sound like a midlife age, and you shared what you just shared with me, and that kind of set me off into a wow. I bet you have a completely different perspective on a lot of that stuff than I do. And I think one of the things that's really important in even what we're doing here is helping to expand our perspective to see life from different angles, from different people's experiences. Go into that a little bit more of some of the things that you faced and experienced. And you said you don't like to play the race card. I think when 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 we're talking about this stuff and somebody throws the race card in there to try to turn the conversation, that's one thing. But I think that it's really important, and it's not about playing a race card, but it is about saying, is there a different perspective on life that I don't have, I don't understand, I don't know. And you shared a few things with me about what your life experience has been, and I'd love for you to unpack that a little bit more for us, because I think it's important for us to have that different viewpoint. Um, you talked about the hopelessness or the being in a state where, yeah, I think you know what I'm talking about. Can you share a little bit more of some of the things that you've experienced that maybe somebody with my life experience wouldn't understand?
Yeah. So you know, I'm 54. I was born in 69. If you know the climate in the 60s, you know, my parents were together the year that Martin Luther King was assassinated.
Hmm.
You know, um, I think too many people try to politicize racism to either work for or against whatever their political agenda is. But I mean, racism is there. It's been around forever. You know, nowadays, you know, I think there is an enemy that tries to stir up hatred for whatever reason he can, you know. But, you know, in 69 being born, and I'm probably one of the first biracial kids in school, you know, it's like it's tough in an environment where you have no father because of the racist attitude and tensions with his family took him out of the picture with us.
Mm.
Never around. I never met my father, you know, never heard him call my name, nothing. So it's like you're just trying to figure it out on your own growing up, you know, and it's like, and half the time you're either too white for your black friends or too black for your white friends. It could be a place where you could be marginalized into a place where you really don't know what to do or who to be, and you can become really callous kind of person, you know. But luckily, you know, I always believe that love wins. My mother and my grandmother loved me, and their grace was sufficient.
Mm.
And they're the ones that told me I could be whatever I wanted to be, regardless of what other people tried to pigeonhole me as, you know. You know, I was told on a few occasions, you know, just being a big black kid, you know, you should probably play football because you won't have a lot of other choices. You know, it's like, oh, really? I'm assigned to football or janitor. Why?
Mm,
You know? So, there's just those things you have to deal with along the way. But, again, you make choices to accept, they have that old saying. It's like, you either tell the world who you are or it will tell you who you need to be. And if you don't have a strong personality and an understanding and love of self, the world will affect you and not always in a positive way.
yeah.
So, I always learn to make the best of it, or the most of it. And, always be able to deflect with a little bit of humor. Humor helps a lot. But, I've always had good friends around me, and I think, real good friends are hard to find.
Yeah.
Um, when we talked about the average age expectancy for Black males, um, I lost my best friend my whole adult life 3 years ago. He was in his 50s. Um, the pastor that I was close to as a mentor and a friend who did that funeral died a year later of cancer.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Those guys never saw 60. So, sometimes it can be tough. I mean, health is important. Education is important. There's a lot of things that ignorance is robbing from people that, we need to put a higher precedence on the education and not just blame it on a race thing, or an ignorance thing, and then turn the other way when we could fix a lot of that with education and caring about people at a level that, gives more opportunities and trains people better from a younger age. So,
Yeah. And you've actually had some pretty serious health challenges, right?
oh yeah, I had open heart surgery 10 years ago. If it hadn't been
Wow.
for my wife making me go to a yearly checkup, they discovered a heart blockage before I ever had a heart attack.
Hmm.
So I make it through that, and then I had cancer 5 years ago, um, in my thyroid. So they caught that early, by going to regular checkups and having some stuff done and looked at, and I mean, there's just a lot of things that, could have gone the other way, but I thank the good Lord that, he must have something for me, and I mean, I'm not here to, scrutinize anybody's faith, but sometimes we need to put a little bit more faith in that God's already done some healing for you in this wonderful body he made you, and maybe we better take better care of it. I didn't learn that till late in life, but luckily, I was able to turn a corner and do a lot of things. I was a horrible diabetic too 10 years ago.
Hmm.
My A1C was 12. If you know what that is, that's like
Ooh.
death knocking on the door. You
Wow.
know,
Yep.
my A1C today is 6.8.
Good for you.
I mean, that right there in itself, I didn't need a miracle healing. I needed a miracle. Troy, stop eating sugar, you know? So that's what I had to learn, like, hey, Lord, my prayer is, what can I do to help myself?
Yep.
That, show me this path that I can be on to be here for my grandkids and my kids, So,
Yeah, and
and
I
that's it.
hadn't I hadn't seen you for quite a while, and I saw you just yesterday. You look great. Tell everybody how much weight you've lost.
Well, it's been an up and down, but from my
Yeah.
heaviest about 10 years ago after my heart surgery, I'm officially down about 105 pounds.
Wow.
So, and I got a little ways to go still. So, but it's a healthy journey. And I mean, if I can say anything to people struggling with weight, stop trying all the fad diets and stuff. Just try to moderation, you
Yeah.
know, just eat a little bit of whatever you want and get your steps in. Don't always park at the front of the parking lot.
Just be wise. Make the hard decisions. Do what you got to do, right? Yeah, but it has to become a lifestyle. You have to determine that I'm gonna do life differently in this category. And midlife is that point where, we come face to face with our own mortality, I think. We always know if you ask somebody, you're gonna die someday. Well, yeah, of course, everybody knows we're gonna. But then at midlife, our body starts sending us signals that that knowledge goes from here to here, and we're like going, yeah, I'm gonna die someday. I better take care of this. This body is not going to just, you know, uh, put up with all this lazy way of doing life. I know that I had my own experience a couple of years ago, and just came to terms with that. It was like, Mylan, you got to quit messing around. You can't mess around. This is serious business. And so I've been on my own health journey, and it's cool to see what you've been able to accomplish, and super proud of you for big decisions.
Thanks. Well,
Yeah.
you just said it. You said knowledge and wisdom. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
a lot of people have the knowledge, but unless you're doing it, it's not wisdom in your heart.
That's right.
You know, so it's like I knew stuff for a long time, but then had to put it into practice.
Yeah.
So once you do that, then it's like it makes a difference. People
Yeah.
think, oh, I'm going to try this diet. I'm going to try that diet. Everybody has a diet. What is your diet? Just change it. You
Yeah.
know, and don't try to take away. Everybody wants to like get rid of stuff. If you find a lot of people when they have change in their life and they don't get something they used to have before, they get angry.
Mm.
It's like you can't do that. And I'm not just talking about food either, man. There's a lot of places like, anywhere you go, you change stuff. People get angry because they don't like change.
Yeah.
You probably see it in the church too. So, that's figure out how to get it so we can trick ourselves that change is good and you're not taking away, but you're adding something good to what you had before. You
You
can
know, I
get
think
yourself mindset. That's awesome.
I think it's all about vision, right? You've got to have a vision for what you want your life to be. You've got to have goals associated with that vision. You've got to know why you want that change, right? This deep motivation. This is I want a better life for myself, and I think this is the path forward. So, like you just said, I'm not. It's not nearly as much about what I'm leaving or cutting out or saying no to, but it's a lot more about being motivated toward what I want. Um, and being able to forge a new path forward and move in a different direction. Now that happened for you. You said it about age 30. Tell us a little bit about because it sounds a little like a prodigal son story, right? You grew up in the church, had some great experiences in high school, youth group experiences, things like that, and then for a little while you kind of I don't know, went the worldly way, or how would you describe that in the transition that happened at 30?
Well, I mean, as a prodigal, you don't forget, the love of your father and the kindness he showed you, as in the story. And, the word prodigal doesn't describe the son, it describes a father's love.
Mm,
So the prodigal son remembers the love of the father. And it's like, until you become a father, you don't get all this father stuff in the Bible. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, hey, you know, this starts to make sense to you. So, I mean, after I, had spent my time away from the Lord and I came back, I just knew there were things I needed to do differently. Everything in my life that was selfish, that didn't benefit my family, that didn't, show kindness and love to others, kind of had to go out the window.
mm,
You, I knew that to be a good father or husband, you got to be there, you know? So that's half the battle. I mean, it's probably literally just half. Just being there is not good enough. 50% is not a passing grade, but
yeah,
it's definitely mandatory. You need that part of it. But what else can you do? What else does God want you to do? A lot of the relationship stuff that we have with the Lord is a lot of people want to tell you what you have to do. And I'm not a big fan of telling anybody else what their salvation should look like. The Bible says that you work out your own salvation with fear and trembling before the Lord. So you need to have a relationship that lets him speak into your life and show you what you need to do, where you need to be. So, I mean, I went through the divorce in 2000 and was single for, almost 4 years. We split up in, I think, 99. I don't remember. But, it gave me some time to really figure out what I need to do. Started reading God's word for myself, going to church regular, spend a lot of time with my family, my little brother and my mother. And then, you know, um, I worked for Family Videos and I started working in Grand Rapids and I started going to this church, Res Life Church. Buddy of mine invited me there. I met my now wife at a church event. We met at a group there and she was also a musician. This year we'll be married for 20 years. You know, um,
congratulations.
Thank you. And she had 6 kids and I had one. And God just simply spoke to me. He goes, I got some kids that need a father. Are you in? I was like,
Mm,
yep. Not easy,
yeah,
but I don't never do anything the easy way, I guess. So I was the man for the job. So, but all my kids do well now. They're all grown. My youngest is 20 and he's in college for nursing. He has a job as a nurse tech at the hospital. And, you know, it's not that you're, as a Christian, you don't do things perfectly. You're not always right. but you learn how to correct and, to forgive and have grace for other people and yourself. A
Hmm.
lot of us suffer from never having forgiveness for ourselves. We've done so much bad stuff. We never can let ourselves have grace and move on. And that could be just as bad as, being unmerciful to other people.
I think that's amazing that you had that kind of mindset toward those 6 kids, that you didn't have a father. It would have been easy for you to say, "Yeah, I'm marrying this woman, and I love her, and I care about her, and I'm gonna be her husband. And yeah, there's a bunch of kids in the house too. I guess I could put up with them." And I think, unfortunately, that's a lot of times how it happens. But you saw the opportunity to be a father for those kids and to give them something you didn't have. I think that's amazing. That's beautiful. Good for you. So you've been married for almost 20 years now, and what do you see moving forward? I mean, what's going on in your life right now? What do you? I see your Lions shirt and cap. That's awesome. I'm with you there, and you showed me your Michigan cup too. Go ahead and raise that for everybody. Sorry, anybody who's not a Lions fan or Michigan fan. We had a good year this last year, didn't we?
A very good year. So, I mean, sports and entertainment, they have their place in your life.
Yeah.
My wife's a big football fan too, so that helps. She's also an Alabama girl,
Okay.
and we have watched Alabama football for 20 years. And it never really mattered that I was a Michigan fan until last year.
Yeah.
But we're so used to winning in Alabama. I got Alabama shirts and hats. We go to Birmingham. Our older three boys live there. But, last year, that was my year. You
Yeah.
know, we had a house full of Alabama fans, and me and my dog Caspian had Michigan jerseys on. So I didn't get to talk a lot of smack. But at the end of the day, hail to the victors, baby.
That's right. That's right. That's awesome. So what else is going on in your life? What fills life right now? What is um would you consider yourself in midlife now, or do you feel like, no, I'm in my that whole dynamic is still kind of, with me. I'm wondering how you feel about stuff um in this stage of life, and if you're what's going on for you? What's life look like?
I definitely don't feel like I'm in midlife, like definitely not crisis. I'm pretty well adjusted nowadays. And I do want to give a shout out to my men's group on Thursday mornings.
Yeah. Yeah, cool.
I
So you're
wouldn't
in
be
a
where I was without that. So
yeah. Actually, that is one thing that is so important that we miss so much is, I think at midlife too, we often find out that we're just kind of doing this thing all on our own, and we're missing that connection. Tell us a little bit about your men's group and what that means for you.
I tell you what it means is I have accountability with
Mm,
12 other guys that will not allow me to be stupid. You know, I mean, this is a Christian podcast, so let's look at the Bible. The strongest man in history is not Hercules. His name is Samson. And he was stupid because he didn't have any accountability. If he had had one brother that said, "Hey, man, you probably shouldn't mess around with that hoe. She's trying to kill you," maybe he would have went, "Oh, yeah, I see that now. Thanks." But he didn't. And she did end up being the death of him,
yeah.
you know? So it's good to have brothers around you that love you and care for you. And that way, when they see you being dumb, you've given them permission to say, "Hey, you're being dumb." You go, "Oh, yeah, I should probably stop doing that."
Yeah.
That's a good place to be. We all need that as men. So, but
Yeah.
you got to be a mature man because if you're not ready for the A word, which is accountability, you probably got some issues you're not ready to deal with yet.
Yeah. That's a great point. I think there's something about that maturity that says I'm willing to allow other people to speak into my life, and I'm willing to submit to the wisdom of the people that God has put around me. Well, and choose the right circle of friends. I mean, we either get to this point and we want to avoid, so we run the other direction. We surround ourselves with fools who will, continue to pat us on the back and tell us we're right on track, and in our foolishness, or we'll submit ourselves to others who we see have wisdom and understand, things about life that we need to understand, and then we submit to that. So it's good. So we've talked about a whole bunch of stuff today. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you, just because I haven't asked the right questions, that you would like to address, or anything that you'd like us to kind of get to?
If anything, just the fact that it's like, as Christian men need to get outside of church and continue to be Christians. They need to have strong, mature relationships that sustain them through the week. I think, I get tired of seeing Christianity just at church on Sunday morning, and then it fails everywhere else Monday through Saturday. So, I no longer work at church, but that doesn't change who I am or where my faith is.
Yeah.
I started a company that does music services about 3 years ago of my own. I have a DJ service that does weddings and private events. I still have a band that does cover R&B, soul, blues tunes. I still fill in as a bass player for some other acts whenever they call. This is what I do for a job. And wherever I go, I make sure that I try to take Jesus with me and who I am and what I do. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter where I am when I do it. So if anything, from this, people who maybe, I know you want to talk about the midlife crisis, but at some point in time, that crisis is probably your own doing because you've been pursuing the wrong things. So think about what you're doing and who you are, what you want to be. Maybe ask God where you're supposed to be or what you're supposed to be doing. Because I got news for you. He gave you gifts and talents. Those don't change.
Yeah.
Whatever you were doing when you were in a lifestyle that was before Jesus Christ entered your life, it's probably the same thing you'd be doing for Jesus. If I could leave you with anything, there's this great story in the Bible where Peter and Jesus are going to the temple. They got to pay taxes. And Peter says, Jesus, we don't have any money for taxes. What do we do? And Jesus looked at him and said, hey, go down and get some fish out the water. When the fish comes up, there'll be a shekel of silver in it.
Hmm.
Peter didn't say, that's weird. Why would I do that? But Jesus also didn't ask him. He didn't ask him to go drywall. He didn't ask him to go collect garbage. Of all the things he asked him to do, he went to the one thing that Peter had a skill set for before he became a Christian. And when he told him he was going to provide for him miraculously through doing that, Peter was like, okay. He went and did it. And then he came back and gave the money and they were all set. That story strikes me real hard because I didn't know what to do when I became a Christian. I thought I had to work at church. I thought I had to, I didn't know what to do. I was kind of lost. And then God was like, okay, now stop moping and pouting. Put your bass back on, use your musical skills, but I'd like you to do it for me. And I was like, I could do that.
Yep.
He's never going to ask you to do something that's beyond your skill set or for what you don't have the passion to do. Because I tell you right now, nothing's more unattractive than a passionless person doing a job. Okay.
Yep.
So
That was a great little wisdom riff there. I don't know if you've ever heard that phrase. I just made it up.
no,
But
listen, man, I like it. I
that was
like it.
great. That was great. Thank you for sharing that. Because I love that insight and your perspective on that story. That's cool. Very cool.
I never really get to tell this story, but I read a story once about a traveling group of musicians and performers, and they came into a small village in the outskirts of this kingdom, and they needed to have a gig to make sure they had enough food and stuff to travel. And when they went to do this little outside thing, it rained. Nobody showed up, and they were afraid they were going to do it. At the last minute, one couple showed up and sat way in the back. And the leader of the troop said, hey, we need to put on a show like it's the last time we ever get to do a show. We're going to give these two people the best show they ever got. And the people were like, we're not even going to make anything. He goes, it doesn't matter. They paid their ticket. They deserve what they paid for. So they go through, they do their whole show. When the show ends, they get a note. And they said their next month, food and travel costs are paid for. Because the couple that came in the back were the king and the queen. Enjoyed the show. So you never know who has the ability to change your life when they love and respect what you do.
Well, and when you love and respect them, no matter what.
Yeah. And never withhold your best. Because you never know when doesn't matter how many people are there, somebody will appreciate it or it'll benefit. So that story always hits me.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I'm trying to do that with this podcast. I got to be honest with you. You know, there's a lot of days you're like going, is anybody watching? Does anybody care? Um, and there's a few. And I just feel like, I got to do my best. I got to create content, put it out there, and let God be the master of what happens with it, and ultimately what happens with me. So that's good stuff. So you referred to what you're doing now. Where could people find you, or if people need your services? What do you do, and where could they find you?
so we have a few things that we do. I'm called SandromedaMusicServices.com. Um, One of my primary things is we are a full DJ providing service. We handle karaoke. I have full lighting packages. We do primarily weddings and private events. We do higher end functions. We dress the part. We have musical perspective. We can get you through whatever you need for the day. Um, we are also doing, I have a band that's playing out, and I'm hoping to fuse that service into a full service provider for wedding music by this next year. I also teach. So I have a studio. This is my office right here I'm in. It's called Sandromeda Music Studios. And I teach here full time during the week. I teach bass guitar and ukulele lessons for anybody who's looking for something from kids to adults. And we can make it fun. We can learn as much serious stuff. If you want to learn scales and, technique, we can do that. Or if you just want to learn some Beatles songs, we can do that too.
Awesome.
As long as we're doing music, it's good to your soul, in my opinion. So, and I play guitar too and ukulele. I teach for a private Christian school. I'm their elementary school choir director, and I also do beginner ukulele and guitar for them. I contracted the year for that. So, I always just try to keep the doors open. Whatever God wants to put in front of me that I can do and it can help my family, I'll do it. And then when I get too busy, I'll hire some more people to keep doing it.
That's awesome. Sounds like you're all over the place. And actually, you didn't even mention I saw you at Lake Arvesta yesterday. You're doing some work for them, setting up some
Oh yeah.
entertainment. Is that right? Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm the entertainment coordinator at Lake Arvesta this summer, helping Brian out with
Okay.
some things. Looking to bring in some better quality, more consistent acts. And
Yeah.
actually, Brian, the owner of Lake Arvesta, is looking to start doing some Christian entertainment, some worship nights and stuff with some local musicians, as well as possibly, I guess it's not a secret, but we're possibly looking to even bring a few national acts into the fold this summer at Arvesta, some Christian entertainment. So
Yeah.
I'll keep you posted.
Awesome. Yeah, and if people haven't been out to Lake Arvesta, what Brian has created there is pretty amazing, and it's got so many different features to it. And I've been out to the island where the stage is and the pavilion. That's a really neat space, and I'm so happy to hear that you're the one that's kind of coordinating the different entertainment that they're bringing out there, and that Brian has a desire to bring Christian entertainment and that kind of thing. I'm super excited to see where all of that goes, and glad that you're a part of that. So.
Yeah, me too.
Well, Troy, it has been an absolute privilege to hear your story and get a glimpse into your heart today. And I love you. I love what you're doing. I so appreciate your kind of place in this world and what you're doing for people, for young people, and bringing music and all of that. And just keep doing what you're doing, bro. It's awesome.
Thanks, man.
Really appreciate you. Well, Troy, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate you sharing your heart. And I will put the information that you shared in the show notes about where people can find you. And also, if there's anything else that you want me to put in there, ways that you want to connect people with your services or whatever, we'll make sure all of that is in the show notes so that people can just find a place to click. So thanks again. Appreciate you, bro. God bless. Keep doing what you're doing. And we'll talk again soon.
All right. Thanks, man. Appreciate you, man. You guys be blessed.
All right. Bye bye. Today's conversation was full of little nuggets of wisdom. And I just want to say just a thank you to Troy for sharing his heart with us today and for bringing us into his life a little bit and sharing from his perspective so that we can all grow and we can all be enriched through your own experience, Troy. I want to invite you as a listener deeper into this conversation. I want to encourage you to keep pressing in. I hope today's conversation was a blessing to you. I hope you walked away with some things that you could put into practice, maybe some things that will help you think a little bit deeper about your own midlife experience and your own journey moving forward from here. I do want to invite you to come and be a part of our Facebook group. Where we continue the conversation and where sometimes I put things out earlier than I do on my other social media, and where we try to kind of get some conversation going about the different areas of midlife that we're struggling with. I also want to ask you if you would so kindly subscribe to this podcast wherever you see it, wherever you take it in, and like or comment. Those kinds of things really help to improve this channel so that we can continue to reach more and more and more people. I'd love to hear feedback from you. That's another way that you can use the Facebook group. Share your thoughts, share your ideas with me, DM me if you'd like to. And I just want to continue to produce content that's going to be helpful to you and maybe helpful to people that you know, people that you love. So share this with others and let's continue to work on this together and make this the best channel for all of us so that we can continue to grow in and through midlife. Thanks again so much for being one of our partners. And I pray that you have a fantastic week. God bless you. We'll see you soon.